हे देयर गाइस, आज नया रिएक्शन लेके आ गया हूँ। जैसे कि आप लोग अपने टीवी स्क्रीन या मोबाइल स्क्रीन पे देख ही लिया होगा। व्हाई यू शुड बी वरीड अबाउट इंडियाज ग्लोबल टेक ओवर। क्यों हम लोग को क्यों वरी होना चाहिए? इंडिया विल बी टेकिंग ओवर द वर्ल्ड एंड मोस्ट प्रोबेबली इट विल बी गुड फॉर अस। तो चलिए देख लेते हैं अभी ये मैक्स माहिर या कुछ हम लोग के देसी लैंग्वेज तो माहिर ही बोलेंगे, जो भी है। तो इनके चैनल पे अगर आप लोग जाके नहीं सब्सक्राइब किया तो सब्सक्राइब कर लीजिएगा, लाइक कर लीजिएगा और बेल आइकन को दबा दीजिएगा। और हमारे चैनल पे जैसे कि यहाँ रिएक्शन देख रहे हैं तो यहाँ भी सब्सक्राइब, लाइक और बेल आइकन दबा दीजिएगा गाइस, दैट यू डोंट मिस एन अपडेट व्हेनेवर आई अपलोड। एंड टुडे वी आर गोइंग टू सी व्हाई इंडिया should why everybody should be worried about India's global takeover. Let's see and dive into this without any further ado. It's a 12 minutes video, so let's dive into it.
India, one of the largest countries in the world, with a highly skilled population that the West just can't hire fast enough, with a history of toppling empires, and now it has an economy many think will topple one more. China. It's said that India's economy won't just equal China's, it'll blow past them, taking China's spot in the global hierarchy. But is this actually true? Because this would flip the economy of the world, impacting you directly, maybe making you rich in the process. And more importantly, will China let this happen? Well, the answer to these questions starts with BRICS. Not the red kind. About 20 years ago, a Goldman Sachs economist invented the word BRIC, which stands for Brazil, Russia, India, and China. This might sound like a list of holiday destinations, but it's actually something much more exciting. It's a prophecy. You see, BRIC, or the more modern BRICS after the inclusion of South Africa, refers to the developing countries that were believed to become the dominant suppliers of manufactured goods, services, and raw materials by 2050. Countries like Brazil and Russia would become powerhouses of raw materials. But in particular, China would become the world's dominant supplier of manufactured goods and services. They would do this alongside one other major country, the only one that could rival it, India. But when you have two growing economies racing through stages of development, both fueled by the same industry, there's going to be ruthless competition, and only one can win. Could it be India? It actually might. Let's go back in time for a second. This is insanely important for understanding the future. But first, let me tell you about my membership group, Finova. It's like OnlyFans, but instead of incels, it's investors. There you get access to additional videos, not that kind of video, investment research, trade signals like this, and live coaching every single day. Sign up below and get 7 days free. India, to put it lightly, has a crazy history. One of the oldest inhabited regions on Earth, going back to tribes that are over 250,000 years old. The ancient civilization spent centuries divided between states and kingdoms. This lasted until around 600 BC when it became engulfed by the Persian Empire. At the time, this was one of the most dominant empires in the world. Even the Greeks knew they were no joke. So India stayed under Persian rule for quite a while, and that is until a 25-year-old came walking along and he wanted to change everything. Alexander the Great cut a path through the Persian Empire, making his way to India, where he tried to make it part of his empire, but it wasn't as easy as he thought. Alexander's men were sick of conquering the entire world, and the Indian armies he fought had a secret weapon nobody was ready for. Big elephants. So he's like, I'm not dealing with those elephants, packed up, left for home, and left India to become part of the Mauryan Empire, which lasted until 1498. That's when this Portuguese guy showed up. He's kind of a big deal because he initiated trade between India and Europe. But most importantly, the British Empire got involved. They dominated India's trade and economy for years, profiting off of the back of its enormous resources and manpower. Well, they sat back and played cricket. Now, India's story could end here, but if you know your history, then you know what happens next. Gandhi happened. Gandhi helped to non-violently slap the British Empire out of India, and the country finally gained its independence in 1947. Free from empires and conquerors, free from kings, free to run itself and seize its destiny, a free, democratic country. And with this fertile ground for economic growth, the story ends. Okay, not exactly. You see, just as India has a crazy history, it's also a bit of a crazy place. It's a melting pot of religions. It's home to over 1.3 billion people, bursting the country at its seams with population. The only country that compares is, you guessed it, China. But India will take that crown pretty soon as well. But all these factors, population, diverse religion, and a relatively young democracy, come with problems that still need to be solved. For example, the country is rampant with widespread inequality. The IMF actually reported that a quarter of the population lives on less than $3.2 a day. Violent religious tensions explode all over the country, and it has growing rivalries with its bordering nations, one of which, you guessed it again, China. So while India has escaped its history and seems poised to explode in growth, is it actually safe to invest? Or are there too many problems holding it back from turning it into the true China slayer? Every investment has its risks, and when investing in a country, there are a lot of factors to consider. A stable government, a population that isn't rioting, and avoiding open warfare are always pretty good things to take a look at. This is why Iran and Russia and Kanye are being avoided like the plague right now. They operate in a way that's perceived as untrustworthy for investment, and that's just kind of bad for growth. For a country to reach its potential, it needs to be a place that companies can just do business freely in, which really comes down to two factors: politics and economics.
Yeah, boy.
When it comes to politics, you really want your country to have a clean bill of health. But when it comes to India, you run into a few problems. Until 1991, India had what's called a command economy, which is just kind of a nice way of saying the government controlled everything. All investment, all means of production. It was far from ideal. However, in 1991, India started a process of liberalization. This meant having more private enterprises, innovating and competing in the market. And that's when things really took off. And this is great, but many think it could be better. If it were better, it would attract even more investment dollars, they say. But what exactly is wrong with India's politics today? Well, take the current Prime Minister Modi. In 2016, he decided overnight to just cancel their highest paper value currencies. These 500 and 1,000 rupee bills were simply taken out of circulation. Poof, gone. The idea was to fight black markets and counterfeits, and it's important to note that if an average citizen legally held this currency, they were able to go to the bank and swap them out. The value wasn't totally gone, but the trust issue still harmed the economy and cut growth for a while, and there's more. India has big corruption problems, and the government is blamed for it. It's so bad that according to The Economist, the democratic status of the country is actually decreasing. Not ideal if your country is trying to beat big bad China. Now let's see the other factor, the economy. Economically, India is like Ronaldo at the beginning of his career. In fact, we got bad news for King Charles, because India just replaced Great Britain as the 5th largest economy in the world. India's GDP grew by 40% in the past 7 years. They're simply titans when it comes to pharmaceutical, chemical, and electrical manufacturing. Tech giants are flooding to India. Even Apple is shifting its production of iPhones from China to India, a clear sign that the country is growing and desirable. So despite some political tensions and a lot of corruption work that needs cleaning up, India seems to be a pretty solid investment. And real quick, I want to touch on the pros and cons for a second, because you might hear me say solid investment. How could you say that when there's obvious issues? And here's the thing, when there's zero risk, then investment returns are priced down to essentially zero. Everyone wants zero risk. Any investment with the potential for a high return is going to have risk. The key is finding areas where the returns outweigh the risks. And this brings us to the crux of this video. India's growing, but is it growing enough to overthrow China? China's the only state that's managed to beat India's growth. It's a country built on an economy and ideology that's so strong, even easygoing dudes like Putin would back off. And its ruler just solidified his power, which puts China's economy in a pretty firm place. But tensions are growing between the two nations, and moves are being made to protect and establish key trade routes. More on that later. But right now, based on their current foundation, will China stay in the lead, or will India seize the opportunity and win? The answer again lies in two key elements. To expand quickly, a country needs a healthy, growing population. And from the outside, it looks like China has India beat. China's #1 in the world with over 1.4 billion people, a tad more than India. Now, numbers matter a lot when you think about industrial firepower, but it's not the most important thing. What matters even more is the age of population. The Chinese population is declining and getting older quickly. This is something that happens in industrialized countries, especially ones that institute insane reproduction policies. And here's where India takes a decisive lead. You see, in India, almost half the population is under 25 years old. It's one of the youngest in the world. Not only that, but it's part of India's culture to get into tech, which means the country has a young, energetic workforce that's trained to do work in one of the most demanded industries in the world, where China's kind of stuck with a bunch of elderly people, meaning slower growth and higher costs. And the story doesn't end there. China has invested since the 80s at a speed that no one saw coming, and managed to build an amazing system of infrastructure. Cities, public transport, airports, factories, everything. In a weird way, that's probably been helped by China's political system, which dominates pretty much everything in the country, right down to people's day-to-day behavior. Now, I'm not supporting that level of control, but they did get things done pretty quickly and lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. Meanwhile, India is a whole different story. While India isn't on China's manufacturing level, the country managed to build a sort of invisible infrastructure, particularly its investments made in IT and tech. To give you an idea, India has 100 unicorns. These are startups that are worth more than $1 billion. This is third only to the US and China. Not only that, the IT sector is so strong that a lot of Indians are becoming CEOs of the most advanced companies in the world. Google, Microsoft, IBM, Twitter, well, you get the point. If I was China, I'd be pretty scared because, well, they've got manufacturing on lock, which is an incredible economic foundation. Their population doesn't have the youth and drive of India's, and India's loving embrace of the tech industry is only going to propel their growth further, cementing their name as a titan of the future, which is probably why China wants to stop them at all costs. Now, if you're a degenerate, and I say pearl necklace, then you probably have a particular image in your head. But when it comes to India and China, pearl necklace means something much more threatening. The string of pearls theory suggests that China's encircling India like a python and its prey. China's taking control of ports across the Indian Ocean and key waterways like the Strait of Mandeb. Combine this with the development of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor connecting trade in the region and China's Belt and Road Initiative, this effectively allows China to form a trade circle around India. This means control of India's power, trade, and freedom. And like a string of pearls, Wind Titan strangles the victim. This all suggests that China is taking India's power very, very seriously. But India isn't about to take this lying down. They actually have a strategy of their own. Because you know what's better than a pearl necklace? A diamond necklace. Countering China's move, India is expanding its naval bases to key locations around the world and improving relationships with strategic countries, even going so far as building relationships with Mongolia, north of China. This allows India to counter China's string of pearls by encircling the country on an even grander scale. This ambitious plan puts India in an incredible defensive position. They actually gain crucial control over the Malacca Strait, limiting China's trade across the Indian Ocean and Africa. So in short, if China wants to fight, India's game. India's ready. There's a lot of unknowns when it comes to India versus China, but if I had to bet, I'd say India comes out ahead. They're younger, hungrier, and have great relationships with Western countries. From here, you might be wondering how to invest in India. And the easiest way to do it is to buy an index fund that tracks top-performing Indian stocks. The first ticker is INDY. This is a fund that tracks the 50 largest companies in India, giving you exposure to the safest assets in the country. If you're interested, simply go on a stock brokerage, search INDY, click buy, and the number of shares that you'd like. By the way, I'm doing this on Webull, which I'll have linked down below. If you want to try them out, you'll actually receive up to 12 stocks free just for joining and making a trade. How's that for a passive income hack? Or if you're looking for slightly more risk in India, you could look at ticker SMIN. This index tracks a portfolio of 240 small cap Indian stocks in a wide variety of industries. Again, you can type SMIN into your favorite brokerage app and buy some if you want to. Just make sure only to invest at the level of risk that you're personally comfortable with. None of this is financial advice. Please do your own research as well. So what do you think? Is India going to take over China? Hit the subscribe button while you think about it and have a profitable day.
आफ्टर वॉचिंग दिस वीडियो, ये वीडियो देखने के बाद मैं कुछ पॉइंट्स से तो इनके साथ सहमत हूँ, बट देयर आर मेनी पॉइंट्स विच आई एम नॉट वेरी ओके विथ. वन ऑफ द थिंग इज दैट इंडिया वाज एक्चुअली रूल्ड बाय मौर्यंस टिल 1400s. कुछ भी 1400s. It was a early, being a historian myself, I have studied history, my universities and my masters, everything. Now if you say me that the Mauryans were actually ruling India till 1400s, after which the Britishers came, like the Britishers came and the Mughals came, what you are doing, like, you know, you are just molding the history. You don't even, you have to do the research, a minimal of research. I'll tell Mr. Max to actually do some research. What is this Mauryan Empire till 1400s? From Aurangzeb to 1400, it's not something which you actually which actually happened. 1400s में तो दिल्ली सल्तनत खत्म हुआ था. लाइक यू नो इट इज़ व्हाट मतलब दिल्ली सेंट्रिक हिस्ट्री में इट्स लाइक द empire ended at Delhi at 1526 during the first war of Panipat between Babur and Ibrahim Lodi. So that is how it ended, and that's how Mughal Empire started, and this is the history. But he says that Mauryan Empire was actually there till 1400s. I don't know where he got this knowledge, but again, and they said that Alexander actually was defeated due to they didn't actually believe that Indians would fight them on an elephant. And that is stereotypically Western thought. You can't even say that Indians were fighting in elephants. That's why Alexander gave up his army and went back. It was not. They were they had their campaigns so far. At that point of time, they were used to travel in horses, right? And while traveling in horses, you should know that they were traveling for ages and ages. If you can think of one's age, by conquering the whole of East Empire, East Asia and everything there, and then coming towards India and fighting in India, in the jungles of India, made them wanted and wary. All the soldiers, they wanted to go back. That's why they went out, and that's how India strategically made them defeat. Like, because fighting in India was not really what you say, the elephant was one of the component of it. It was not the whole story that due to elephant. He has saw that Alexander movie by, I guess, in which there were it was acted by, I guess, Colin Farrell. Yes, he saw that movie and he got that there were big elephants, that's why they could. That's a bogus thing. I can't really take that. और भी जो बोला गया इस चीज़ में कि इंडिया as being what you say is a country where like, you know, 30 to 80% lives under poverty. I don't know where he saw that. Maybe Dharavi, he saw that there. But even in Dharavi, they have something on a shelter. If you go to America and Los Angeles, they are living in tents out there in Los Angeles itself. I am not talking about the other cities. And if I talk about America, there are most of the people who America hides under the shrug to just show their brilliant life. So that is different again. So ये जो है ना, that is this mentality of the Westerners of thinking, oh, India is still a poor country with a lot of snake charmers growing here by and there. It's not something like that. We have actually surpassed our colonizers by GDP, and we will also surpass everybody. Our peoples are not really dumb. So ये बोलने के बाद मैं इतना बोल सकता हूँ कि whatever other things were financial in everything, he saw it right, and he said, because I think he's a financial advisor or something like that, he has a great expertise on that, so he was talking facts in that. But otherwise in the history, man, it just Gandhi ji did everything to make ourselves get the freedom. No, there were many other people who have done. Just get the facts right, man. What are you even speaking? So yes, जो भी है, चलिए, आपको अगर ये रिएक्शन अच्छा लगा होगा मेरा, तो प्लीज़ लाइक और सब्सक्राइब कर दीजिएगा इस चैनल को, और ऐसे ही वीडियो देखने के लिए हमारे चैनल के साथ जुड़े रहिएगा, हमारे एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली के साथ। तब तक के लिए चलिए मिलते हैं आपको फिर एक नए वीडियो में, और टिल देन टेक केयर एंड पीस।